Volkswagen introduced its first electric crossover, the ID.4, earlier this year, and it was only available with rear-wheel drive. Now, Volkswagen has added an all-wheel drive variant, which I'm out to drive here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the car is going to be localized for the American market. And you might not think that all-wheel drive would have that big of an impact on how the ID.4 drives, but actually it has a sizable impact on performance that I'm going to show you in this video.
Now we're going to take a brief look at the exterior of the ID.4 because not much has changed here when you opt for the all-wheel drive model. Just like the rear-wheel drive version, you can add a gradient package that is going to give you those really cool silver roof rails. I think they look great. You also get those bigger wheels that we see. I love the front fascia of this car. We've got standard LED headlights that give this car a very premium look, and I think the face is just very friendly and inviting, much unlike the aggressive Mustang Mach-E. Now, I mentioned those larger wheels as part of the Pro S package, and we do have a little flitzer, that's what Volkswagen calls these little badges, that let us know we have an all-wheel drive version. But aside from that, the only way that you're going to be able to tell this from a rear-wheel drive model is that the all-wheel drive model is 0.6 inches higher with a little bit more ground clearance. Now, the ID.4 is a pretty stylish looking crossover on the outside, and inside Volkswagen has gone to extra lengths to make sure that it's worth the premium price tag. This is a little bit more expensive than something like a Tiguan, and I think the interior definitely reflects that. We've got a nice leatherish steering wheel here. I don't think it's real leather, but it feels quite nice. We've got the touch sensitive controls for haptic feedback here on the steering wheel. I'm not a big fan of those. I wish they would have just gone with a little bit more conventional setup here, but a little bit more on that later. Nice materials all throughout. We've got this really cool reddish burgundy leather here on the dash. I love the ID light. It's this little light that'll like signal when you're getting GPS prompts or when you're charging, it'll show you your battery status. That looks really cool. I do like how we have a little helper screen right here that's going to give us our miles per hour, our safety stuff, and our navigation. That is better than a Tesla, which has nothing here, so you have to pay attention to the main screen. You get this really weird shifter. You twist it forward for drive, backwards for reverse. It is quite interesting. You get used to it pretty quickly. The thing that I'm not quite used to is this 10-inch touchscreen. It's a little bit laggy. You'll see as I go to this menu right here. It gets a little bit smoother as you leave it on for a little bit longer. When you first start it up, it's a little laggy. You can see there we had some weird transitioning from this menu to the next. I think that's kind of the worst of it. See, I'm trying to go to the right and it won't let me go to the right. It's a little bit weird. The going between menus is a little bit frustrating. I don't love this setup that much. They can fix this with software updates. This is a little bit better than the first time I drove it, but it is still not perfect. The other thing that I don't love are the touch sensitive controls. To raise or lower the temperature, you have to either touch here or slide your fingers. You can also say, hey ID, turn the temperature to 71 degrees. And wait for it. Okay. There you go. That works pretty well if you don't want to touch all of the different things, but I would have just preferred having buttons for quick and easy access. The rest of the interior is quite nice. We have really comfortable seats that are massaging on this model. It's just a roller that goes up and down, but it's nice to have. We've got really cool configurable cup holders here. I love how you can take the slots out and move them any which way, so you can have cup holders or just big storage if you don't need to put cups there, which is quite nice. The back seat is roomy for kids, and the load floor is quite flat as well, and there is a decent amount of room in the trunk as well. So overall, I think the ID.4 has a really nice cabin. So the last time I drove a Volkswagen ID.4, it was the base rear-wheel drive model, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I really liked the low center of gravity. I liked the good turning radius. I liked how chuckable it was. I really enjoyed how it felt kind of like a Volkswagen Golf, which is a really nice driving car. The only thing it could have had more of was power. The rear-wheel drive ID.4 only produces 201 horsepower and 229 pound-feet of torque, resulting in a rather pedestrian 7.5 second 0 to 60 time. Now that's pretty comparable to something like a Toyota RAV4 or a Honda CR-V, but in a world where everybody is obsessed with Tesla's 0 to 60 times, 7.5 just isn't going to cut it. Now the base ID.4 does have a pretty good range, 260 miles, maximum, or 250 if you get the Pro S with its 82 kilowatt hour battery, which is quite good, but again, not really going to blow away too many Tesla fans. What we have here with the all-wheel drive model certainly adds some excitement to the equation. With that motor on the front axle, we get a massive power jump, 94 horsepower by adding the all-wheel drive. That is a crazy amount. I really can't think of too many cars where you just add all-wheel drive and you gain pretty much a 50% power increase. So we now have 295 horsepower and 339 pound-feet of torque. Those are completely different numbers than what we tested in the rear-wheel drive ID.4, and it makes a huge difference having that front motor produce an additional 107 horsepower and 119 pound-feet of torque. We can now hit 60 miles an hour in 5.4 seconds, and when you put your foot down on the throttle, whoo, it really goes! It grips, it goes, it handles really well. We're on this really snaky back road here, and the handling of the ID.4 is just as good as I remember it. That low center of gravity doing its job, making sure that you can take these corners at pretty appropriate speeds. The steering has pretty nice connection to the road, and now we finally have more power. So this car really does hustle off the line. I do think that this finally will excite you when you hit the accelerator. Now, there's no mechanical linkage between this front motor and the rear motor, which gives it sort of really interesting handling. We've got a differential that kind of handles everything with the wheels, so you toss it into a corner and it can send more power to the front if it detects you need more grip. Most of the time it can run as rear wheel drive only, so it's not sapping the power and it's not hurting your range too badly either. Volkswagen says the all-wheel drive ID.4 that I'm driving will go 249 miles on a charge, or 240 miles if you get the Pro S. Now that's really only an 11-mile difference from the rear-wheel drive one, and for the amazing performance that you get from this all-wheel drive model, to sacrifice 11 miles, I would absolutely make that payment.
Now let's talk pricing. If you still want a rear-wheel drive ID.4, it's going to come in just under $40,000, but you do get a $7,500 federal tax credit that is going to pull it down well into the 30s, so that's something to consider there. If you want the nicer Pro statement version, that's going to be $44,495, and if you want the two all-wheel drive trims, the base model is going to start at $43,675, where the Pro S is going to cost $48,175, and if you add the $1,500 gradient package like we have on our car, you are going to get pretty close to that $50,000 mark, but remember, the tax credit will pull that down to a slightly more affordable level. If you want the Pro version, availability is going to start in February 2022, but if you're willing to spend a little bit more on the Pro S, you can get one starting October 2021. And as I said, I think the all-wheel drive version is definitely worth the upgrade and something that I would consider if I was in the market for an ID.4.